Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This is going to be my Game of Thrones episode 5 video, and oh my god, careful for spoilers, hold the door for spoilers, here we go. Biggest reveals that I totally did not expect to get this soon, revealing the true origin of the White Walkers and how HODOR got his name, how he went from being Willis to being HODOR. His name's different in the books, so that might mean something about the twist on the TV show, but I'm assuming this is one of those storylines where George R.R. Martin gave them some advice. So hopefully there's a way to clarify the big White Walker twist as well as the HODOR twist without spoiling Winds of Winter, because it's going to be a while before that book comes out. But let's do top 10 WTF. I'll explain book changes as we go along. There were a couple book things that happened. Number 10, Littlefinger resurfaces. Sansa makes him explain what he thinks happened to her. They really laid it on thick, but like I said in one of my previous videos, the actor who plays Littlefinger actively did not know what was going on with Ramsay. He feels genuinely bad about it, so he's trying to help Sansa now. But the question is will she let him? I don't ever want to see you again, but I will take your advice and go seek my uncle out. So she's just learning the Game of Thrones. Why did you lie to your brother when he asked how you found out about that? She kind of trails off. She's taking a page from Littlefinger. She's learning to play the Game of Thrones. Her value will be in her politicking, not in her war making, like say Jon Snow. He's the guy that's going to ride out on the battlefield and decapitate people. Sansa's the one who works with Davos to find out which northern houses they can go to. So part of the fun of the next couple of episodes will be seeing them build their army out. And I like the way they invoke some of the book things. Now, there are a lot of characters they haven't done from the books yet, but they invoke the Manderleys, Lord Too Fat to Sit a Horse, things that they've skipped over so far. So they are trying to include a lot of book things. It's just that in the books around this time, Stannis is still alive. He's the one that's trying to mass the army and sends Davos around. So he sends Davos to White Harbor. So in this scene, when they mention White Harbor, it's just a nod to that. Number 9 WTF, the origin of the Faceless People. Jaqen H'ghar narrates the story of the first Faceless People in the mines of ancient Valyria. There have been a couple videos I've made that have explained some of their origins because there are some mystical origins. There are a bunch of different slaves that were taken by the Valyrians, thrown into their mines, and the idea of the many-faced god arose from all these different slaves with different cultures, different languages, praying to their gods. People got the idea that they might be praying to the same god, so eventually they organized. That led to revolt and the beginnings of their order. But the way Jaqen H'ghar explains it makes it sound like it was just the Faceless People that founded Braavos. It's way more complex than that. What happened is there was a colony of Valyrian slaves that was being taken somewhere. When they were out at sea, they mutinied, took those ships, sailed all the way up around to where Braavos is now, and developed their city in secret. And they remained a secret city for a long time before they emerged to the world. And by that time, they had established the Iron Bank. They become very wealthy. This very insular culture. The way Sansa talks about the North being mistrustful of outsiders, people that aren't Northerners, it was the same way with those original Braavosi. But from those original slaves, you had people that founded the Iron Bank, you had faceless men, you had all the other beginnings of the facets of Braavosi culture, like the water dancers, like Syrio Forel is. Number 8, Arya versus the troupe of actors. She has to kill fake Queen Cersei, but the real drama is her having to watch the first couple seasons of the show reenacted on stage. Her father being beheaded, her sister being abused. So the fun of this is the metaphor of what's going on, like the drama of the actors and what it says about what's going on over in Westeros right now with the people that those characters are playing. So she has to assassinate Queen Cersei because the actress who's playing Sansa thinks that she's better. So she wants to get rid of Queen Cersei so that she can play the queen. So you can kind of see how that's a metaphor for what might be happening in A Song of Ice and Fire. Arya clearing the path for Sansa to rise. But right now she's just dealing with the actors. I don't know if the wheels in her head have started to turn yet because she doesn't know exactly what's been happening in Westeros. She just knows that her sister is at the mercy of Joffrey and Cersei. She probably knows that Joffrey's dead, but she might not be up on everything that's happening right now, especially what's happening with Sansa. Let me know in the comments, though, do you think that her killing this version of Queen Cersei so that Sansa can rise says something about what might be happening later in the story to the actual real-life versions of these characters? But just so much fun, just because you get so excited at the idea, like, oh, does this mean that Arya is going to try and kill Queen Cersei eventually, cross her name off her list? That'd be amazing. But I almost forgot, this is actually something from the books. It's from a sample chapter from Winds of Winter. George R. R. Martin releases sample chapters a couple times a year. This troupe of actors is from Winds of Winter. Number 7, another huge one. This was like one of the big twists of the episode. Bran learns the true origin of the White Walkers. So just to explain, Bran's traveling to the past. He's seeing the origin of the first Night's King at some point during the war against the First Men. So there were a couple different wars in Westeros. It's a pretty normal thing for Westeros to be in total chaos with itself. So the first men migrate to Westeros. The Children of the Forest at that time inhabited all of Westeros. There were weirwoods all the way up and down the land. The first men invaded. They got into a big war. Eventually there was a truce. The first men settled in the south. The Children of the Forest migrated to the north. And they were at peace until the Andals later invaded. So then the Andals had a war with the First Men, and then even later than that, Aegon the Conqueror came in, and you have what looks like the Seven Kingdoms of today. So there have been countless wars. I'm actually going to have to do a separate video to explain every major conflict in Westerosi history. There are so many. But the thing that the TV show hasn't done yet, I mean, we're only 5 episodes in, so we might see more of it, is that the change from the books is that the Children of the Forest have very powerful magic, as we've seen. But part of the reason why they were able to stop the war against the First Men is because they shattered the arm of Dorne with the Hammer of Waters. They had a truce on a special island. It looks like the TV show isn't doing any of that. It's just simplifying and saying the Children of the Forest created the White Walkers to stop the war, a weapon of mass destruction that they lost control of. So you can think of all kinds of real-world nuclear proliferation parallels here. So now we know that the Long Night is just collateral damage from the war against the First Men. It was completely unintentional, and now the Children of the Forest are dying off at the hands of the Night's King, the person that they created. So you could also think of this as a cautionary tale about having children. Thinking about having a child, yeah, you'll probably lose control of them at some point, and then they'll kill you. In the books, they talk about the 13th Lord Commander becoming the first Night's King, so it seems like they're changing a few things from the books. There's a video I did right before the season started, so I'll put a link to it in the description, because there's actually a lot of White Walker history, just not this much. Like, this has officially pushed into territory that's beyond what George R. R. Martin has written. But number 6, the Kingsmoot, another huge plot point from the books. This was a little closer to the way it happened in the books, but a couple of changes too. So the Kingsmoot is pretty much the way you see it. It's kind of a farce of an election. Euron Greyjoy just rides right in and says, "You suck, I'm gonna be king, give it to me. Yeah, I totally killed my brother." He's a total boss. The actor's performance was amazing. But the thing that they've changed from the books is confirmed that Euron Greyjoy was the one that killed Balon. We don't know that yet. It's still a mystery as to who killed him. And when he rides up to the Kingsmoot, the way he gets everyone's attention is by blowing a giant Valyrian horn called Dragonbinder. It implies he's going to bend Daenerys' dragons to his will. It's a horn for controlling dragons. But the other big change, the 1,000 ships that he's going to take to Daenerys to try and marry her, he actually sends Victarion. So they're basically giving all of Victarion's storyline to Euron. But it is a really big book thing. Kingsmoot and Euron trying to woo Daenerys to form an alliance. If you're really big on book history too, you could think of Euron Greyjoy and Daenerys' 1,000 ships as like a callback to Nymeria's 10,000 ships. The ancient warrior Queen Nymeria founded Dorne. She came over, she brought her people over in 10,000 ships. So there was a book written about her called The 10,000 Ships. So think of her as like a cross between Daenerys if she was more like Lady Brienne, like an actual sword-wielding warrior queen. So anyone that's named Nymeria, like Nymeria Sand, Nymeria the Direwolf, they're named after that original badass warrior queen. Number 4, Daenerys takes her new army back to Meereen. So I like the way the Dothraki are just like, all right, you're the new boss. We'll go where you want us to go. Let's do it. And she sends Jorah away. It's this really touching scene. He admits, I do love you. Tyrion was right. So the real question now is, will he actually be able to find a cure, or will he just try to come back and help her later? What I think might end up happening is that he'll just forego a cure. Like, he'll actually look for a little bit, but then go, Daenerys needs me. I'm going to go back and help her with the time that I have left. I feel like at the rate of progression, he could survive to the end of season 8, but they're speeding things along, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I feel like it's okay to be hopeful about Jorah. Stannis was able to cure Shireen's grayscale, but the circumstances were vastly different. He caught it immediately, and he had unlimited money to bring healers to him. Jorah has none of those things. But number 3, this is actually so much fun. Varys versus the High Priestess. So I feel like this might be a way Daenerys will learn about the War for the Dawn. But when she was explaining to Varys about the voice in the flames, that made me think, ooh, Varys was probably talking to the Red God, or the Red God was speaking to him. And there's this weird thing that was going on in the episode. Let me know if you guys picked up on it too. The way they were talking about the children creating the White Walkers, the way the High Priestess was interpreting the prophecy. Daenerys is the prince who was promised. She didn't use gender when she was talking about it. She said the one who was promised, which is actually truer to the original Valyrian version of the prophecy. But then Jaqen was invoking the idea of the many-faced God. It's all the same to the many-faced God. He doesn't only come for the wicked. So I did a double take during the episode and I'm like, wait a minute, are they trying to tell us that this is all the same god? It's all connected and all related. So I'll say up to this point in the books, they presented most of the gods as separate entities. When they talk about the red god, they talk about him existing in a constant state of battle with the great other, the person that the White Walkers serve. But if the White Walkers were created by the children of the forest, does that mean the children of the forest also worship the great other? So they're starting to mix a lot of ideas together, and it's making me think that there's a level of connectedness that we haven't really thought about before. There have been people that have said, what if all these gods are just the same god and people are misinterpreting things? That was a big runner during that High Priestess explainer. She said, people make mistakes. She was talking about Melisandre, but the idea applies to everything on the show. So that's really the mind trip. I feel like people were kind of thrown off by the HODOR reveal, like this will blow your mind. But the way they're talking about the gods, the origin of the White Walkers, the Great Other, the Red God, that I feel will be the bigger mind trip this season. And I feel like that will require a George R. Martin clarification. Like, yes, I intended it to be this way in my books, or no, this is absolutely different from the direction that I'm taking things in the books. So let me know in the comments, do you feel like they're going to say that all of these things are connected, there's only one God, or do you still believe that there are many different gods? I feel like there's a reason why Jaqen H'ghar keeps saying the name, the many-faced god. He keeps saying that out loud over and over. Number 2, Bran versus the Night's King. He's able to grab Bran in his flashback as he's projecting himself astrally into the past. So this is where it gets a little confusing because you wonder about the mechanics of it, but I feel like he's only able to do this because the Night's King is so powerful and he's connected to Bran through their shared ability, because both Bran's powers and the Night's King's powers flow from the powers that the Children of the Forest have. So the interpretation that I'm taking is that they share a lot in common, even though they're vastly different. There are a lot of powers that the White Walkers probably have that Bran doesn't have, but it explains, especially the Night's King being so powerful, it explains why he would be able to grab Bran in the astral projection, just like the Three-Eyed Raven would be. So I actually think that's a good comparison. The Night's King is every bit as powerful and has at least equal abilities, if not most of the same abilities, as the Three-Eyed Raven and the abilities that Bran has. But R.I.P. Three-Eyed Raven, R.I.P. Summer, and R.I.P. HODOR, because number 1 WTF, hold the door. So we actually learn more about the bleed ability that Bran has. They have yet to explain how strong that is, but if you're confused about what's happening here, Bran had warged into HODOR, so Bran was simultaneously in proximity to young HODOR while he was warged into adult HODOR. So I think that has something to do with the connection. So we'll have to wait for a clarification from Dan and Dave as to the interpretation that they took, or from George R. R. Martin, or for someone associated with the production. But it was such a touching payoff from a big setup earlier this season, as well as a big setup from Season 1, Episode 1, from that very first episode, because you're like, hey, there's this big guy that can only say his name. Why is he only saying his name? That's kind of funny.
We had this meeting with George Martin where we're trying to get as much information as possible out of him, and probably the most shocking revelation he had for us was when he told us the origin of HODOR, how that name came about. I just remember Dan and I looking at each other when he said that and just being like, holy shit.
Hold the door! Hold the door! Hold the door!
So rest in peace, HODOR. Rest in peace, Summer. Three-Eyed Raven. Your sacrifices are not in vain. But let me know in the comments, what was your favorite part of the episode? Was it the HODOR reveal? Was it learning about the White Walkers? Was it seeing the King's Moot? Aside from some of the big reveals, overall, I think this was actually my favorite episode. It's such an amazing payoff. But just a quick reminder, there's a new round of the giveaway that starts now. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a HODOR on this video. You can leave a comment too. Please just leave a comment. But I'll totally do a follow-up Q&A, and I'm going to wait a day or two to see about my next bonus video, just to see if there's any clarification on some of the mechanics of the twists that they had in the story, especially White Walker, Children of the Forest related. That's such a huge deal. So everybody be sure to pour a drink out for HODOR and Summer. They will be avenged. While you guys wait for my next video to post, you can click here for a deeper explainer on Bran's flashbacks and the way they're using them this season on the TV show. And you can click here for last week's episode 4 video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.